Good morning, everyone, or afternoon or evening, depending on what time zone you're in. Welcome to IPython office hours for Tuesday, the 13th of May 2014. We've got actually most of the core IPython team here in the chat room, along with Nick and Scott. And yeah, I'm not.
And Jeff Hendy is here from 2 Sigma as well.
Ah, great. Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
If anybody's following along on the YouTube live stream, then feel free to ask us questions in our help chat room, which there's a link to on the IPython homepage. Be aware that there's like probably a 2-minute delay between what we say and when you hear it, so don't get annoyed if we don't respond right away. Oh yes, Matthias has asked me to tweet the link out. Actually, Min, can you tweet the link because you've got the IPython account?
Yeah.
Great. So, who would like to talk about what?
How about this weather we're having, huh? Oh, sorry.
I would suggest 2 Sigma guys that are here could maybe talk about what they're doing, present themselves, and everything.
Yeah, cool. So we've been building a notebook platform, notebook the same meaning as IPython Notebook, for internal use, and we just released the code as open source last week, and we have a public beta available for download. So the core differences between IPython are that we're really focusing on the multilingual aspect and encouraging and supporting people to use multiple languages within the same notebook, switch back and forth between languages in the process of one analysis. And we've built a plugin-based architecture for adding in new languages. So many of the languages we currently support are using IPython-based kernels on the back end, and we also have some that are using various types of custom backends. So we were interested in talking to you guys to get a sense of how is the IPython kernel architecture planned to evolve. How can we make sure that our IPython-based backends will keep working with our front ends, etc.
So, Min, do you want to start with the recent message spec changes?
Yeah, so one of the main things we're working on for the next release of IPython is better support for the for non-Python kernels, and so one big piece of that is removing a bunch of Python or IPython specific stuff from the message spec, which mostly consists of renaming some messages and simplifying some of the messages so that more logic is on the kernel, less logic is in the front end. Things like completion and introspection. The front end no longer does any lexing, although lexing happens on the kernel side, because it would be a huge pain to do lexing of of all languages in JavaScript.
So is that targeted for, that's IPython 3?
Yeah, I mean, that's in master. So that's done.
I'll put a link to the IPEP in the help chat room.
Yeah, and then Thomas, if you want to talk about the kernel spec stuff.
Yeah.
You can probably also open an hackpad on ipython.hackpad.com with all the link we want for later viewer, because later viewer won't have access to the history on the chat.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, I got the link, thank you.
Yeah, there's actually 2 links. I've just pasted both of them. So then the other thing which I'm working on is a system to discover installed kernels in different languages, and there's a link for that. So at the moment, like to use IPython with different languages in the notebook, you kind of have to start the notebook server with this long command line flag to tell it how to start up different kernels. In IPython 3, there's going to be a way for kernels to register themselves, so you'll be able to select them from a drop-down when you create a notebook, and which kernel the notebook is using will be stored in notebook metadata.
Cool. Yeah, one of the things that's one of the problems that we face right now is sort of identifying what backends are available, and we haven't really dealt with it yet. We just fail in various terrible ways. So we'll appreciate that improvement. If the more regularized the different backends are, then the better it is for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are kind of the main multi-language related changes that we're working on. We're letting, because in addition to this, registration on the file system is, a REST API to query, so that the JavaScript can query what kernels are available, and then it'll populate a menu, a drop-down menu in the notebook UI, that kind of stuff.
I see we've gained a couple of new people since we started. Hello, Greg. Hello, Bouquet. I don't know how that's pronounced. Sorry.
Oh, someone's in the text chat on Hang It. Okay. Yeah, so this is just kind of an informal people dropping in and asking questions kind of thing. So if anybody has things they would like to talk about, go ahead.
And we don't have any.
What's the timeline for 3.0 like?
We aim for a release every 6 months, and so 3.0 was due to be this summer. Schedules slip somewhat, as I want to do, so probably sometime this fall.
Yeah, probably kind of the end of summer at the earliest is kind of the target.
I guess we were a little curious about the R kernel that you guys mentioned. So we saw the README file said it was sort of experimental and shouldn't be trusted. Could you guys talk a little bit about what are the plans for that?
The plan is to get the R community to do things with it. So it's
the developer
experimental, but it is.
The developer is the one who's talking right now.
Okay.
Yes. So I basically wrote the R kernel. It's experimental, but I mean it's basically working. It's ready for people to come and try out. Yeah. Feel free to.
Do you have any particular plans to add autocomplete or any other work on it, or you're hoping the R community is going to take it over?
I'm mostly hoping that the R community is going to take it over. Someone has expressed an interest in writing autocomplete. He was talking about that just before the message spec changes that have just landed. So I asked him to wait for the message spec changes because completion was one of the things that changed the most in that. But now that that's done, I might ping him again and see if he's still interested in doing the completion stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we haven't dealt with autocomplete yet. It looks pretty hard. I mean, none of us is really an R expert or an internals expert.
Yeah, I think for a first pass we can probably get pretty close just by, I think R has an ls function which lists variables in the namespace. I think we can just consider those the completable things, at least to get the ball rolling.
Right. yeah, we're using the rserve library. I don't know if you've seen that, but it allows you to talk to R over a socket. It looks like you wrote your own server in R.
Yes. Yeah. So we have a specific protocol. I mean, not that it is specific to IPython, but it is a particular protocol which is well documented and everything, but it's not the protocol that our server or anything will speak.
Yeah, we also, of course, we don't. Nobody speaks rserve's protocol except itself. So we have a little wrapper server, little Java server that's a wrapper around the rserve.
Yes, I mean, one of the things that we had also thought about was making a Python wrapper around R, because we've obviously already got all the kernel machinery implemented in Python, and it would be fairly easy to just use that to execute R code. The hope with actually writing it in R is that it's easier for the R community to work on and improve.
I see. Yeah, we're not really sure. We're not committed to rserve really. I mean, I'm not sure if it was a good idea or not. There might be. I'm sort of scoping out alternatives, so I'm interested in your opinion on sort of what's the right way to do it.
Well, definitely kick the tires on the R kernel. See how well that works in your system.
Yeah, it should be compatible. One thing that we're concerned about is like when the R, if the actual the execution engine sort of gets stuck or overloaded with filling up memory or just hangs or something like that. It's nice to have a wrapper server to be able to recover that kind of situation.
Yes, that's something that we are kind of dealing with. So at the moment, if a kernel is started locally, which is currently the only way that the notebook can start kernels, then the notebook server is managing it and knows how to interrupt it and kill it. Where we have plans for we call it a kernel nanny system that will be like another process running on a remote computer, which will be able to do that interrupting and killing. Yeah,
these things tend to get closed when the real scientists throw their real data at them.
Yeah, but yeah, we do already. I mean, the default case is everything running on one machine, and in that case, we can already kill and interrupt kernels.
I see. That's cool.
Yeah, and the object that is in charge of monitoring the kernel, you can subclass that. So what we start, there's an object called the Kernel Manager that starts, stops, and interrupts kernels, and it does that with methods like start kernel, interrupt kernel, that kind of stuff. So if you need to spin up kernels on remote machines, you can subclass Kernel Manager so that start kernel does anything from what we do, which is just called popen, to spin up a Docker environment and talk to it there. And there's a fairly clear API of how that works. So you could have remote starting, stopping, and signaling just by subclassing the Kernel Manager object we have now. But you would have to write all the remote stuff. But none of if you can use SSH, none of that is actually very complicated. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that was all that we were hoping to talk about. I do want to say thanks again for all the work you've done. We really appreciate your back-end kernels, which are much more mature than anything we could have come up with.
We've been working on them for a long time.
And did you make an announce on the public mailing list?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Did you make an announce on the full mailing list IPython dev, or was it only private mails?
We only did the private email for now since we're just in the beta release to end users. In the next 2 or 3 months, we're planning to launch version 1.0, and at that point, we're going to make announcements to a bunch of places, including the full IPython mailing list.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still definitely in the it's barely out the door and receiving a lot of bug reports stage. So it's pretty rough, and we're not really ready to promote it. We just wanted to reach out to you guys right away, and say hi and thank you, and see what's going on.
Great.
Are you guys in New York or in Houston?
We're in New York.
Okay, because if Sci-Fi is in Austin, so all of us are gonna, or most of us are gonna be there. So if you guys wanted to do some face-to-face, and we usually sprint on IPython at that, so that's in July. It's just after the 4th of July this year.
All right, cool. We'll look into it.
Yeah, and there's a PyData in New York in the fall.
That's probably a good target for us. I think it's going to be a couple months before we're really ready to, put it in the spotlight. And of course, a conference in New York is much easier also.
Yeah, the PyData has there are a few a year, and so Silicon Valley was just last week or something, and it's a good conference. There will be a couple IPython folks at PyData New York. I think Brian and Fernando, our overlords, will be there.
I don't understand. We'll definitely go to PyData.
Yeah.
But what? So Brian Granger, you mean?
Yeah, Brian Granger, who is or was here.
Was here. I think he's gone.
Yeah, and Fernando Perez, who created IPython.
I see.
Yeah, Fernando.
I was just going through Brian's code today. DMQ authentication, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I look forward to seeing any or all of you there.
Yeah. Great.
Great. Okay, we've got a question in the hackpad. Is there any specific plan to integrate the work of William Stein on LiveSync in the notebook? We do intend to work on LiveSync, but it's still some way off for core IPython. There's quite a few things that we want to get to first, like having sharing sorted out and the multi-user server.
Yeah, we've met with William a couple times to talk about it, and I think he's planning to. I think the way he's done it now is it's kind of tightly integrated into how SageMath works, and he's working on cleaning that up so that he can pull the sync stuff out as a standalone thing. Which I think about the time that he's planning to get around to that should be a good time for us to start looking at figuring out what we're going to do in IPython proper. But it'll be a while before we sync in the notebook. We got a lot of stuff to get to first.
Someone's just written, is it easily integrated as is? And I think the answer to that is probably not.
No, I don't think so. It's so I believe he has his own notebook server, and he's running. I don't remember exactly all the pieces, but it relies on many pieces that are not in common.
And if I remember correctly, he converts everything to text, do the live syncing on text, and retransform it to JSON.
Yes, yeah. So on the changes, it serializes the notebook to a text document, and then does computes the diff, and then uses that diff to sync everybody.
Hey, can I ask a somewhat related question?
Yeah.
Sure.
It's my first time joining. My name's Jason. I work out in San Francisco for a company called Minerva Project. We're doing a new 4-year undergrad thing and looking at IPython for some of the math and computing and science curricula. And I'm curious, I've been hacking around on the weekends a little bit to understand how a sync component might work. And I'm curious if there's any thoughts on, in the notebook JavaScript, if people are working on extracting a model layer or adding more events in the notebook JavaScript, or rather, if that was an approach that I took for this experiment, would that be well received as a pull request? So a lot of the notebook JavaScript is kind of tightly bound between the view layer and model layer. And so are there thoughts to tease some of that apart, or is somebody working on it?
There is a plan to do that. I don't know that anybody is specifically working on it, but John, who is in the middle of the list, who wrote who wrote the widget stuff, that's done with the backbone model view thing, and that was kind of we were also using that as a small test project to learn new tools, and we do plan to take to decouple the notebook document manipulation from the notebook UI.
I'm trying to remember, is that part of what Brian was going to do with the new dashboard? I think
No, dashboard's unrelated.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think he might be writing the new dashboard with Backbone. But
yeah, that's what I meant.
So it is a similar project, but for a different piece of the JavaScript.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that is a plan. Definitely, if you're interested in working on that, it's kind of difficult to coordinate the many things we have going on, and refactors like that are especially difficult to coordinate.
Sure.
But if you're interested in working on that, then we can definitely chat on list and talk about things.
Great.
Yeah, it is definitely a goal to decouple the manipulating the document from drawing on the page.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks.
Sylvain Corley is asking a traitlets widgets question on the hackpad. Who wants to have a go at that?
I can, but wait, hold on, I gotta find hackpad.
Yeah, we got too many things, too many ways to communicate.
Okay, let's see. Okay, a question on traitlets. The signature of the callback does not contain a reference to the object inheriting from has traits. Instead, a handler name old new would be convenient to have. Handler object name old new.
So we can't insert a new parameter as the first thing because that would make it backwards incompatible.
Mm-hmm. And this is more of a trait.
We're thinking about changing callback APIs. I wonder what we could use for that.
Yeah. So there's this wonderful tool by an excellent developer. It's called Backcall. That makes a nice tool for writing callback APIs. Yeah. So I'm trying to remember that, because I mean obviously you can wrap it in a you can wrap it in a simple lambda to add a reference and a closure, but the traits callback will actually support several signatures.
I don't think that's one of them.
And I don't, yeah. So there already is a mechanism that it checks how many arguments the handler takes and makes a different callback. So if we could do it in a safe way, if it takes 4 arguments, right? So if it takes 3 arguments, it gets name old new. We could, I think, say if it takes 4 arguments, take object name old new. But
that might make sense too, because some of the other widget callbacks have sender just for that reason, so you can use one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we should. Yeah, that's one thing that we probably want to think about in the, as people are getting used to how the widget stuff, some of the things we may want to reconsider are callback things and structure. And breaking stuff in traitlets is one thing, but breaking stuff changing stuff in widgets is something I have less of a problem with because of the nature of our preview release of widgets and then figuring stuff out.
Less code has been using widgets for less time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think instead maybe removing?
Well, maybe we want to have a higher level API rather than using, give widgets an API for registering events and callbacks and things, rather than just relying on the traitlets API. Even whether we add this extra signature to the traitlets event or not, we may want to not use the low level traitlets API. We may want to use higher level widget APIs more often.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we should definitely keep an eye on what widgets people are building and what their event hookups look like, and see if we can maybe make some of those things easier. This is one of those data points.
And we should also mention that there's a plan to split traitlets out as a separate package, so it's installable separately from IPython.
Yep.
Which would make it easier to make these kinds of changes because you could have quicker release cycles for the smaller project.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Great.
Okay. Issues on the JavaScript side.
Maybe we take another question while Sylvain is writing.
Yes, if anyone has a question, please fire away. There's a few people in the Hangout that we haven't heard anything from yet. So if any of you would like to say anything,
there is a question in Hip Chat.
Oh,
I think.
let's see. All right. Nick Evans, I was going to ask in chat, but internet connection is bad. New to Python, found IPython to be amazingly useful for my data analysis work. Would love it possible to have a GitHub-style code analysis review functionality so that other analysts could have a look at my work and provide commentary on the rendered notebooks. Okay, so does somebody want to do a brief bit about NB Viewer? I can probably do it. So the usual, there's a couple of tools that we usually use, Nick. So if the notebook is something that you can post publicly on the internet, just stick it in a gist or whatever and feed the URL into this site that I've posted a link to. That's NB Viewer, which just provides HTML renderings of your notebooks that you can just share the link with people and have them view that. If it's something private that you don't want to publish on the internet, then NB Viewer is just like a web service wrapper around a command line tool called NB Convert. So you can do like IPython NB Convert --to HTML notebook, and there are there's two restructured text. There's two PDF if you have a LaTeX set up, so yeah, you can absolutely render it into forms that you can easily share with people and have them view.
If it's in a local environment and it's for coworkers which are in the same company than you are, you can also install NBViewer locally. So it will have access to everything which is public on your private network. So it's not technically on the internet. And you have also some option to share local file, but it's not recommended. So you cannot really comment on Notebook like on GitHub. There were, I think we spoke with Hypothesis people at some point, I think it was last summer, about maybe having Hypothesis, let me find the link, integrated with NBViewer, which basically allow to have like kind of text recognition to attach comments to piece of web pages, so that you can comment on NBViewer, and while you are updating your notebook by pushing a new version, the comment would stay. So what is this? Oh yeah, thank me for the link on iPad.
Yeah, that's a good point. So there's nothing for doing commenting at the moment. We're thinking about that. If you have ideas, then like building on top of NBViewer would be the way to go. Part of the reason that we're being slow about that is because of security concerns on the public internet. So if you have any kind of a login or anything integrated with NBViewer, then JavaScript in people's notebooks can steal your cookies or whatever. I'm not a JavaScript security expert, but it can do nasty things.
I'd be more concerned on NBViewer of having sort of the YouTube level of comments on notebooks. I mean, that would just be the end.
Yeah, a problem with the way NBViewer works right now is because it's just a thin renderer for random URLs on the internet. Is nobody owns. You know, if you post a notebook that is rendered on NBViewer, you don't own that notebook. There's nobody to moderate the comments or anything. So the logical thing, you know, you can embed in the notebook a link to a discuss widget or something, and you can use the annotation things like hypothesis to do stuff. But if we add comments and stuff to NBViewer, what we really need to do is add a notion of authors and owners and moderators, and it increases the scope of NBViewer dramatically just to have everything we need to make one comment, or to make one comment in a reasonable way.
Seems like my
Nice.
head is down, so sorry?
Yeah, I want to say yes, there is also a legal issue. If we allow comments and people to comment, we can get legal issues with that. And even if now we might be protected by non-focus and everything, it's something we should really consider before moving forwards or adding authentication to NBViewer and things like that.
Fair enough. Yeah, it sounds like my internet settled down, so I'll try talking now. Yeah, the goal would be to have it behind authentication, and I'd seen NBViewer before, and I was at the PyData Silicon Valley conference, and I talked to someone, and they had said that there was a GitHub site or GitHub-like site that was looking at integrating NBViewer right into it, and the goal would be to have the ability to comment on individual lines and have the rendered data saved, so that when, say, someone 6 months later was like, why was this decision made, you can kind of look back at it and say, here's the reason, here's the discussion, you know, it was vetted, it looked good at the time, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can you remember who that was or what the project was called? Because I don't think I know about that.
I forget his name, but it was the guy who gave the talk, the keynote before lunch. It was the astrophysicist and talk. Anyways, I talked to him afterwards.
I think it was the project is GitLab. They made an announcement on IPython mailing list about they were interested in doing that. It was quite some time ago.
Right.
Yep.
GitLab, I
Is
think.
it
Yes.
GitLab?
Yep.
Oh, it's
GitLab
it's
is
open source.
an open source clone of GitHub.
One thing we could do is on the side of notebooks that are on NB Viewer, we could add a link to the, if you click on a cell, on the correct line in GitHub, so you can directly jump to GitHub to comment.
I guess we could. It would be fairly non-trivial because that information is thrown away pretty early in passing the notebook file.
True.
And yeah, commenting on the raw JSON is not a terribly pleasant experience in any case, especially if you've got graphics and things.
That was what I tried originally, and I didn't realize that they were stored as JSON objects. I was hoping it'd be like HTML or something, but
well, if you want to store it as HTML, you can.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least you can export copies as HTML. You can't round trip.
Yeah. So so if you have, you can. What NB Viewer does is it takes an actual notebook, and a notebook is JSON. And then it renders it to HTML with a tool called NB Convert, which you can run locally.
Okay.
And then and then shows you that HTML. You could, if you want comments on a thing, you could run NB Convert to convert to HTML statically, and then make comments on that HTML document. Like there's no reason that NB Viewer isn't the only way to render notebooks, and in a lot of ways NB Viewer is the worst way to render notebooks because it makes the least efficient decisions possible because it's a thin render. It doesn't use any file storage. It doesn't it has minimal caching. But if you want to build the thing, if having the HTML document is useful to you, you can just run NB Convert and then make comments on that.
That'd be one
just share both the original notebook and the HTML export version of it.
Okay, where had we got to with the... Oh, there's quite a few questions have now appeared in the... Oh no, is that Matthias typing things up? Or who's typing here? No, this is Sylvain. Okay, we did the traitlets thing. Widgets. Issues on the JavaScript side when using model.set key value. Oh, right, Jonathan's been answering that in line. Remote kernels. I have a feature branch on Spider to connect to a remote kernel and explore the remote file system, though it's not possible to interrupt restart IPython kernels remotely. Cool. Yeah. If the machinery to... Well, we can already connect to a remote kernel. It's starting remote kernels. That's the thing. But yeah, it's cool to see more integration getting into other tools.
And so then you should be on a POSIX system. You can do a little hack to get interrupt to work just by doing a SIGINT, issuing a SIGINT, just through the OS signal or through the signal module. You just that's what I use in VimIPython and PyPython to make interrupt to work on kernels that I don't own, because we have a nanny process for the notebook server.
But so that doesn't work on a remote system, does it?
Well, it does. It does. If you have the host name and PID, you can just SSH host.
Yeah. Oh, right.
There's an example. I threw up an example notebook for interrupting remote engines in parallel, in IPython parallel, so you can interrupt all your engines no matter where they are, just by getting their host name and PID, and then you just make a simple one-liner to SSH. It's just one of those things that it's easy to do when you know everything about your system. it is hard to do generically in a way that we can put in IPython itself, and that's why we need the kernel nanny stuff.
Yes, I read the other day the machinery that's used to interrupt kernels on Windows.
Yeah, because
Oh, blimey.
Windows doesn't actually allow. Windows doesn't really have signals in anything resembling the POSIX sense, and being able to set to signal processes that aren't subprocesses of the signaling process involves some totally bizarre arcane thing that doesn't even resemble how we interrupt kernels on what one might call reasonable systems.
Backbone.js, any plan to allow partial updates on sequences using Backbone collections?
No.
John has answered that there aren't any plans, but it would be a good idea. And there's a bit of discussion about Cyril Rossan's hands-on table widget, which allows interactive editing of pandas data frames.
Yeah, I think this is a good example of things that are good to build but don't belong in IPython. Right? The part of the goals of the widgets in IPython are to build a good base layer and API on which people can add custom widgets derived, more complex widgets derived from that. And I think adding things like maybe a partial update array thing or the table things are perfect examples of things that we shouldn't do, but other people should. And if there are things that we do that get in the way, then we can clean things up. But the bar for what belongs in IPython itself in terms of widgets should be things that are very simple and very basic. And basically, the scope of widgets that ship with IPython is not planned to grow in any significant way beyond what we have now, ever. That the model for growing widgets is part of our task is making it as easy as we can for people to write and deploy or write and distribute and load custom widgets, which is something we need to work on.
And Sylvain is just responding to that. Use.
I don't actually know exactly how it would need to be implemented. Ideally, as as high a level as possible. But so there's two levels. There's the low level. There's the really low level COM API where you're just sending messages, and IPython doesn't care at all. And then there's the higher level widget stuff. And it may be that some things need to be added to the widget stuff in order to be able to do what you want. And we just need to look at what needs to happen. So what I would say is figure out what needs to happen to build that, and then see if there's anything in IPython that should change to make that easier, or not. It may be that this is a case for low-level APIs, and that's okay.
There's a higher level custom, stateless messages in the widget stuff. So I think you would use that. The sync thing especially.
Yeah, I would suspect that you don't need to make direct calls to the COM API to accomplish this, but I'm not sure. I think John might know better.
Yeah, I don't think you do.
Cool. NB strip out. If you have a more sophisticated version of NB strip out and the git hook filter, we would be very interested. IPyNB files add a lot of noise to Git. So one thing I've been thinking about is a split recombine that would separate notebook files into code cells and all of, or yeah, code and text probably in one thing, and all of the output and the generated product in another file, so that you could have a hook that would split when you committed things and recombined them when you checked them out. That's something that I want to work on at some point.
If I can add something, like you're not obliged to use things that are in IPython with NB convert in general. So we have an IPynB to IPynB filter that is coming in. I think it's PR5720 that I will add to the ACPad. And any extra filter you want to add on NB convert in the config file, you can import other package. So you can create your own package that do some transformation on notebooks and integrate them with NB convert. So you basically can run only part of the cell, or that's what Jake Vanderplas is using for its Pelican plugin. He have a custom pre-processor that will strip the few first cells of notebook and add some at the beginning and the end to say, hey, this is my notebook, but when it's on NBViewer, I have a few other cells that I don't have on my blog. And also in the sense that Thomas just spoke about exporting part of the file, I had somewhere in my computer a proof of concept of file user or fuse file system that basically expose notebooks as a file system. So it's kind of hackish because lists, you can't really expose list as folder, or you have to name cells by the number, and then cells are always changing number, which is annoying. But basically you could store notebooks directly as a file system and use Git to make differences between cells and have metadata on a separate file and directly see the base64 encoded PNG into the book.
Excellent. We're just coming up to an hour, which is how long we've been roughly planning to speak for.
Greg, did you have something? You're the only one that hasn't chimed in. And your mic is muted.
Yeah, so no, I've got nothing. It's just really interesting for me.
Okay.
All right. Any? Oh, we're getting some messages in chat. People saying. No one's asking anything in the help room.
Success.
Great. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Good to talk to you. We're going to try and do these once a month. So
that's what you said last time.
Yeah, all right. Last month we got a little held up by releasing a new major version of IPython. Next month we will continue our efforts to do this once a month.
I'll believe it when I see it.
So hold us to that, and yeah, don't believe Paul's cynicism.
Bye, people in the future.
You're all very welcome to join us next time. We of the past salute you.
Any last words from anyone else? Minna's just scoffing, just shaking his head, disapproval.
See you in 2 days.
Yeah, see you at the lab meeting.
So Matthias is referring to we have a weekly development meeting, which is also a hangout on air. So that's Thursday morning, 10 a.m. Pacific time. We will tweet out the link for anyone who wants to follow that. And we have another hack pad that we put the agenda on, and we can, if anyone's interested, we can give you the link to that. Feel free to ping us in the help chat room or on a mailing list or anything. All right.
I have one more comment to something that was said in the beginning about the sharing notebook with colleague. There is nbdiff.org that allow you to see the difference between two notebooks, which is not finished, which was done by a student of Greg Wilson, which is Trevish, and I don't remember his name. And don't remember also
Travis
it was,
Armstrong.
yes, okay, it's easy. And if you want to work on it, and if it helps you, it will help us too. I will pass the link at the end of the iPad.
nbdiff.org.
Super.
And it's on
Yes,
GitHub.
that was well remembered. That's certainly relevant. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Continue making the pull requests, and we look forward to talking to you again. Going off there.